Good morning. Good morning to you.
Welcome back to Morning Barbados. We have two new faces joining us. You're seeing on screen Tailyn Osorio, and she's our interpreter today. But joining us for an interview is Lionel Smith, who's President Advisor of the Barbados Horizon Deaf Charity. Good to see you again, Lionel. As always, welcome to Morning Barbados.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm happy to see you too.
Last time I saw you, we were actually making some public service announcements, and I recall that we had quite a lot of fun getting it done. So it's wonderful to have you in studio chatting with us a little bit this morning as we look toward International Week of the Deaf. Inclusive education and sign language advocacy is what we want to talk a little bit about today. How important has it been for you to be able to communicate with people through sign language?
Well, it's very important when we, are in discussion of education with deaf people, specifically within this context, in the school, we need to have quality interpreters and quality teachers within education that know how to sign. And we need to have the same rights and same access as the hearing folks and hearing children for all.
What has your journey been like, Lionel?
Well, my journey was a little bit different because of my sister, specifically with my family. And so, yeah, I did go through special education, but I didn't go and do the comprehensive exams. I didn't get a degree or anything like that. So when I finished graduating, I just kind of, traveled the world a little bit and just learned about, what is happening in these other different spaces. And I share that with everybody. I share about, what's going on in the other different spaces with deaf communities. And I share that with the deaf community locally. And so they become aware of that.
Talk to me more about the local deaf community in terms of how they're faring. We still aren't, as you mentioned, seeing as many people learning sign language or the quality sign language and interpreters that we need to be able to move forward. There have been some inroads, but what are some of the major changes that they would like to see?
Really one of the biggest changes we would like to see is having sign language taught in primary schools. Basic signs, basic understandings, and that way as they progress through schools, they realize, okay, there's a little bit more respect. They'll have more respect for sign languages and for deaf people. So really teaching sign language at an earlier age and more about deafness, I think, will really help with integrating deaf people more into society. People would be more accepting.
Lay out for us a little bit more in terms of some of the things that we might see as regular day-to-day activities that are made that much more difficult because people are able to communicate through sign language.
Well, so deaf people have normal lives just like you, right? The only thing is that hearing is different, right? And so, for example, with emergencies, health services, education settings, various different settings within the community, it's so important to have a sign language interpreter, right? Because as you're presenting or having a conversation or so, making announcements, the hearing folks know all of this information, but the deaf folks don't. And so having that access to the same information is really important.
Absolutely. What role do you see government playing in this? I know we talked about getting sign language in school, but do you feel like you've been getting that platform that you need to be able to truly share with the requisite ears listening to be able to make the difference?
Well, really, the government needs to have the responsibility to get everything in line and prepared. So, for example, with Prime Minister Mia Mottley, when she has her announcements and she does her presentations and such, everyone has the access to that, right? All of the hearing folks have access to that, but there is no interpreter. And so with deaf people, they have to kind of go about finding that information secondhand, whereas with an interpreter, they would have the same information. And so having that accessibility, that full communication access with the interpreter is really important. But we also need to have that ready to go, right? So we should have really kind of a master list of qualified sign language interpreters, so that way if one is not available for these things, then another one is available in the other, and so on and so forth.
Well, that's, sounds easy enough, and I'm sure the right ears are listening for this to be able to happen. Across the board, we do have a lot of signing, but there are shortfalls in the system that we definitely need to fill. Now, during this International Week of the Deaf, which aims to raise awareness of sign language rights, how has advocacy for sign language evolved over the years in terms of what you yourself do over at the Horizon Deaf Charity and other groups who are a part of the fight?
Well, deaf people have the right to language and the right to sign language, just as hearing people have the right to language, right? And so when hearing people, right, they can't deprive you of your language, maybe your accent, is important. All of those things are important. But with deaf people, it is really important to have that language right to access. For example, if there's a word that you don't understand, a signed word that you don't understand, deaf people become a great wealth of knowledge in that, and understanding, oh, these are, this is what this means, and so understanding how that plays into identity as well. And so for language, with families, for example, also learning about signed language and the right to sign language, that's really extremely important. So for example, with foreigners, we have a sign language interpreter here who's not from here, and she is able to help with that sign language facilitation, right? So instead of us communicating and being really awkward and trying to figure out what we're saying, we have that access to make this conversation go fluidly.
And there have been quite a few allies who have more or less popped up or come more into plain view lately, who are making things far more accessible. Can you talk about how important that has been generally to your overall fight?
Well, so here, it's also important to understand that we don't really have an official Bajan Sign Language here, and maybe later on, maybe in the future, we would really love to have that recognition. So for example, in the US, they have American Sign Language, they have interpreters, they have advocacy groups, they have all kinds of access and rights to sign language, but here we do not have that. We don't have that, and so with deaf people in the community, it's important to partner. It's important to have partnerships with the hearing folks and with allies, so that way we can get these things done.
All right, have you ever come up with any new words, or how do you interpret some of the Barbadian slang now that you mentioned that we don't necessarily have a Bajan sign language? Are there any secret words? I mean, of course, that we can say on TV that you can share?
Yeah, we have so many, right? And, there are some that maybe are more private, with sign language, like Shafet, for example. So Shafet, so this is the sign for Shafet. People who know Shafet will know, that that's a sign. So deaf folks here specifically will know that sign for that restaurant. And And then for Oystons, right? So on Friday night, when we go to Oystons on Friday night, this is the sign that we use for Oystons, that isn't used in other sign languages. And so it really is a beautiful language. It's beautiful, to discuss these kinds of things because, for example, with, discussing with families and stuff, it's also expressions. The more clear types of grammatical structures that typically happen with sign languages. And so, for example, with like flying fish, we have flying fish, that we cook and all that stuff. So we know when we're signing all of those things.
Cuckoo.
And cuckoo.
Even I got it.
Right. It's
lost in translation for her.
Right. She's still trying to get it. And it's similar with how people speak here too, right? When foreigners come here and they hear us speak, our language, it can be very overwhelming for them. They might not necessarily understand it. And so foreigners have to learn the spoken language here just as much as they have to learn the sign language here.
Absolutely. Give me that sign for Shafet again. All right, I love it.
Yeah, it's because of the picture, because of the mustache. And so that's why we gave that sign that helps identify it.
Okay, I absolutely love that. And for you, I know that you've been at the forefront of the fight for a very long time. Lionel, you continue on, you do fantastic work. Kudos to you and the Horizon Deaf Charity as well. What are your plans? What would you love to see in the short to medium term? If you had just the power to do one thing, make one major change that you think would make a major difference in the lives of deaf people, what would it be?
Yeah, I think I would really see, just again, that sign language access, right? So having the interpreters, so for emergency services, for TV and public announcements, really having that full access to signed language, I think would be really the biggest thing. And then also finally having our official recognition of Bajan Sign Language would be really helpful for us moving forward.
Oh, that's beautiful. I want to thank you so much, Tailyn. I saw the interview with you yesterday, so it was wonderful having you here with us. And Lionel, always good to see you, always good to chat with you as well. And I always learn something new when I meet up with you.
Yes, nice.
Good stuff. Remember, it's International Week of the Deaf. We're talking about inclusive education and sign language advocacy. It's important that we start and continue these conversations. It's important that we're able to communicate with each other. It's important to remember that they're just like us. The same way that Tailyn didn't understand that he meant cuckoo, and I did, because of our cultural linkages, we have to treat it in that way in terms of how we're able to communicate. Remember, starting tomorrow, Bonnie Leonce is putting on sign language classes. You can sign up and be a part of it. We're going to share with you in the coming week exactly how you can do that. I'm sure she's still taking entries in. We want to thank you once again for coming in and sharing with us. Don't forget, today is Sneaker Day here in Barbados as well. So you're hashtagging BB Sneaker Day 2024 and sharing your sneakers there. If you want to share your shots of you and your sneakers with us, email them to morninbarbados@cbc.bb. That's morning without the G. Or you can WhatsApp them to us. Our WhatsApp number is 228-5562. See you later, Lionel. At Shafet. All right, bye.
Morning, morning, morning. Good morning. Good morning to you.